behind the house that I grew up in, the house on Rush Street in South El Monte, was a really, originally it was a really wild area. There was the San Gabriel River that if you went directly west from my house, from the street at least, if you, it would run into a dead end and run right into the river about 4 blocks away. You literally would go right into the river. If you went south out my back door, straight as the crow flies, it was about a mile and a half. No, my goodness, maybe about 4 miles to the river. Something like that, 3 miles, 4 miles. Anyway, doesn't matter. It was all wild area. We ran around and played in there, and you came across hobo camps in there, as they were called back in the day. That's where the bums were. You had to watch out for that. And it was really interesting. The river was still clean. There were tadpoles and stuff. And as great as that was, eventually the Army Corps of Engineers came and transformed the land. And they turned it into the Whittier Narrows Parks. And the Whittier Narrows Parks, which are still there in San Gabriel Valley and in South El Monte, Rosemead, I guess, area. San Gabriel, South El Monte, San Gabriel. There were a number of softball fields and there were a number of soccer fields, all brand new, all, new lights and all bright and shiny. And there were all kinds of tournaments there and big to-dos, sports-wise. There were also these great playgrounds that I liked, not being a sports guy. Those were really great. A number of them, big playgrounds. That was a lot of fun. And even cooler than that, there was a rifle range, a shooting range, as you came in on the west side of the park, and you look to your left, there was a shooting range, and with grandstands, you can sit there when you were a kid and watch people shoot their guns. And next to that was a little airport for what they called radio-controlled planes, remote-controlled planes. They had planes, jets. They had air carnivals there for a couple of years. It was fantastic. They also had string-controlled planes. My brothers did that for a while with the string-controlled planes. And string-controlled cars, too, these high-speed cars. Really amazing. It was a pretty cool park. It was very actually nice to have it back there growing up. I forget how much I enjoyed that aspect of it. But better than all of that stuff, and better even than Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm, because this is Los Angeles. I grew up in Southern California. Grew up with Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm, and my father worked very hard that we should go at least once a year to Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm, and much as he disliked it. We'd go, and I always loved it. It was great, great, great. When they built Universal Studios, that became my favorite. But my father's favorite thing of all in Southern California during my childhood was the carnival that would come. It came for quite a few years, and it came every year from in the mid-70s for quite a few years, almost to the 80s. This carnival would come and set up at the south end of the park near the 60 freeway. And in the first few years, there was no fence and stuff. You could literally see out my back door to the carnival, which was quite a few acres away. My house was really small, but there it was. It was a dream come true. You'd walk out my back door and there was a carnival. And the first couple of years, as I say, it was my father's favorite place because he'd say, "Hey, we had, there were 6 of us kids. Hey, let's go to the carnival." And my father would go, "Sure." He'd pull money out of his wallet and go, "Here, get out of here." And he'd continue watching TV. And this was back when you could be 8 years old and wander off to the carnival at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And hey, see you later, going to the carnival, and come walking back home across the park, 10 o'clock at night. No questions asked. Did you enjoy I'd walk in the door. "Did you enjoy the carnival?" "Yeah, it was great. I think I'm going to go back tomorrow." "Oh, good." That was my mother speaking. Oh, it was a different time. The third year of the carnival and the fourth were the best for me because on the third year, I run into my friend Oscar, who lived in the front house. We lived in this complex where there was a house, 4-unit apartment complex, and then a house in the back. I lived in the house in the back. Oscar lived in the house in the front. And he says to me, that he got a job at the carnival. That if you go ask the guy, you could get a job at the carnival. Sounds great. I'm 10 years old. I could always use money. And so the next morning we arranged it. I go talk to Oscar. Next morning, 7, 8 o'clock, I go to the carnival out the back door and go to the carnival. And it's also Easter week, Easter break or something for sure. And go to the carnival, find Oscar. He's working at a dime toss booth. You toss a dime into a dish or a glass, and you got to keep the glass. He tells me, there's the man, go talk to him. It was this guy, looked like a rancher. I go and talk to the guy, and I say, hey, I want to work here at the carnival. And he says, why would I hire you to work at the carnival? And so I point to my friend Oscar, well, you hired him. He's working here in the dime toss booth. And so he looks at me and he crosses his arms and he says, well, why would I hire you? And I thought this was a good selling point at the time. I pointed to my house and I said, well, there's my back door right there. And I could come right to the carnival and work. And he looks, and I guess he must have thought it was a good idea. He says, okay. Come with me. No, wait, I messed up my pitch. First I sell the back door, and he looks at me, he goes, well, okay. He goes, but why would I hire you? That's what it was. So I look at the back door, that got my foot in, you know. He then looks at me and he says, okay, but why would I hire you? What are you going to do? That's what he asked me. What are you going to do? And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work at one of these games. They had Midway games. I'm going to work at one of these games, and I know how to juggle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to juggle while I gather kids around me that look at the juggling. And then once I got them looking, they'll go ask their parents, and I'll get them to play the game. That was my plan. And the guy said, great, come with me. And so I go with him. And he takes me over to this game, this barrel game. There were these barrels, they had triangular holes cut into the barrels. And you threw a softball, and the softball barely fit into the triangle. And so that's how you got it in there. And when you pulled it out, you had to use your 3 fingers and get right in and out of the triangle. And that's how you pulled it out really smoothly. They taught me the whole bit because they gave me the job. I got a job selling 3 throws for $1. And into this impossible triangular thing. And they had these big unicorns, a big fancy prize. It was a 2-sided booth. The other side of the booth was this biker, this sort of Hell's Angels guy. I remember he was a really young guy, soft-spoken, bearded. His bike was right there. He slept underneath the booth at night. And I remember the 2 years I worked there, he was really nice, nice and quiet guy. The adventures of the carnival were not really much to talk about. It was just fun to stand there all day. I really did just juggle all day, and my plan worked perfectly. I got a quarter for every exchange. There was 3 throws for $1, so if someone bought 3 throws, I got to keep a quarter out of that $1. At the beginning, the gentleman talked me all through the change-making process and all the stuff. And it was a genuine young man, carny guy that owned it. He owned a few of the Midway games. He was a skinny young guy, dirty in the face, I remember. His clothes were clean, but he just seemed perpetually dirty and sweaty and always on the hawkish lookout for you. And he definitely gave you the evil eye, and he was always looking at you. But it was great. It was really, really great. They gave me $20 to start with, and I had to, of course, for the making the change. Anyway, I go out there. It was great. I juggle. And it was just a lot of fun. 2 things before I wrap it up. I just dawned on me, I think it eventually, working on the Carnival Midway, I think that tied into why I became a used car salesman at some point in my young life. I was like a used car salesman for like 3 years. And I remember the first lie I told and the whole bit. It was a whole thing. I just dawned this minute. Anyway, I'm digressing, but that just popped in my head. Oh, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, the other thing I was going to say was, as a lover of novels and films, I knew a little bit about carnival culture, and the coolest thing out of the 2 years that I did the carnival, 2 weeks each year, I got to see there was a kerfuffle in one of the booths, and this guy had made a big fuss because he'd knocked down one of the stuffed animals and it fell in the dirt, and the booth owner was in a uproar about it. He was saying, this is a $75 teddy bear. And the guy was like, the hell with you, I'm not going to pay for that. And they started pushing each other, and the carnival guy, the guy that owned the game, he yells, hey Rube, hey Rube. And if you know what that means, I would suggest you Google it. It's a circus talk. It's carnival talk. And I knew about it from novels and stuff and movies. And I was thrilled to be sitting across from this whole fight and saw the guy yell, "Hey, Rube!" And all these guys came out of the shadows, and the cool biker guy hopped over and went over there, because when they yell, "Hey, Rube," that means there's trouble, and you go in there and you help your fellow carny. I thought that was pure Americana. I totally dug it. And that's probably my most favorite memory from the carnival.